Okay? Those are the expressions of natural law. Now, when I say living in harmony with natural law or living in opposition to natural law, what do I really mean? Well, what this has to do with is knowledge. And we're going to keep going back to this trend. This thread is not going away. Okay? And guess what? Every time I teach any of this stuff, whenever there's the new age community around or present, okay, and you'll encounter them from time to time, they'll insist, they'll even see it's like, you can tell knowledge is becoming a bad word to these people. No. When you say K-N-O-W, no, it's almost like they immediately have an avulsion, extreme negative reaction, and it is fear, but it's mind control moreover, because they are being fed this poisonous untruth that there's not really any such thing as knowledge, and that knowledge is not the way out of this prison. And I'm telling you, it goes hand in hand with religious traditions, because they want you to externalize your power, externalize everything. And I'm not telling you, I'm not saying don't have a model for behavior. And okay, this person, Buddha patterned it. You want to pattern your behavior on the Buddha's life? Great. Live the great life. You want to pattern your behavior on the life of Christ? Whatever. And again, I'm not getting into this discussion here today about the actual historicity of the man Jesus, regardless of what you believe regarding that. I understand I could write books on astrotheology, okay? I understand that being may never have existed in the way a lot of people believe he did. So what? Whether Siddhartha Gautama existed in the form of a man or not, or whether that's an allegory, who cares? Understand the spiritual teachings they were trying to convey to humanity and then apply them in your life. Live by that ethic, that code, and great, okay? And have whatever religious notion you want, okay? What I'm saying is what this religion called the New Age movement and what many official, organized, regional religions, okay, do is they try to take the emphasis off knowledge. Because again, if you're not seeking truth and trying to develop knowledge, that's how this information remains occult. And that's how the control system stays in place. They want you to externalize your power to a deity or a guru. Once you do that, you're accepting your chains. You're saying, I have no power. Let me tell you something, folks. I'm not powerless. I am full of power. Why? Because I have knowledge of how things actually work. Nobody can tell me that I'm owned by somebody else and can get me to believe it because I have understanding of my sovereignty. If they can take that away from you by getting you to de-emphasize the importance of knowledge, of self-knowledge, they own you. That's when you're owned at that point. Okay? Knowledge is the way out of this. Knowledge, understanding, and then converting that to true wisdom through actions. Not believing in something, not accepting everything, not waiting on somebody to come down and save you, whether it be Zoroaster or the aliens from Zeta Reticuli or Ashtar Command or Jesus Christ. Okay? You keep waiting on an external Savior, you're going to be waiting in your chains forever. The knowledge of truth is what the Christ figure himself proclaimed would be the pathway to true freedom. Now, whether you put any emphasis on even exoteric Christianity, I'm telling you, that's the core of all the mystery traditions, is that until you take in the light, you'll never dispel the darkness. And the light is knowledge of truth. That's what it has always been symbolized as and represented as. Okay? Knowledge is the answer. And here's what the biggest piece of knowledge that comprises natural law needs to be understood. There is a difference. It is a 100% completely polarized antithesis. These are diametric opposites that exist in nature. These concepts, right and wrong, do not exist as constructs within the human mind. Anybody who believes that is thrown completely off the path. They are engaged in Satanism. Let me just say it just openly right out in a way that is completely unambiguous. If you believe there's no real difference between these things and that they do not exist in nature, you are accepting Satanism. It's a satanic belief system that comes directly from dark occultism. And once again, you could say whatever you want about believing that or not. I was a priest within this religion. So if you go up to a Jewish rabbi, and you would expect he would have some knowledge of the Judaic tradition, would you not? If you went up to a Catholic priest, you would say, well, he has some knowledge of Catholicism and how it expresses the Christian tradition, would you not? If you go up to a Islamic, what do they call them? Right. You know, would you expect that this practitioner of his religion, who's in the priest class of his religion, would have some knowledge of Islam? Well, I'm telling you, I was a priest in Satanism. And I'm telling you, the concept of moral relativism is satanic belief. It is satanic ideology. It's one of it's their second tenet. They have 4 pillars. The 4 pillars of Satanism are self-preservation is the highest aspiration, and nothing comes above it. The second tenet is there is no such thing as the objective difference between right and wrong. Right is what's good for me, wrong is what's bad for me, personally. And that's it. And I get to make that up based on my likes, preferences, and whims. Okay? The third tenet is social Darwinism, which is an extension of macrobiological Darwinian theory. Okay? Social Darwinism, an oligarchy or a ruling class gets to direct the herd because we know better. And it's just our right to do so because our intellect makes us superior. And the fourth pillar is eugenics. Since we are ultimately God, since we decide what's real and what's not real, and we give that perception to the rest of the herd, and we get to decide what's right and wrong, well, we're God here. And therefore, we get to decide who lives and who dies. That's the 4 pillars of Satanism. And you know how many people believe that nonsense? A whole lot. Way more than people in the priest class of this religion, because they are propagating these tenets everywhere in human society. So many people are Satanists and do not even know that they are Satanists. It is a secret, infectious ideology. And I'll tell you a personal anecdote real quick. And I'll tell you who it is now, because I don't care anymore. My own grandmother. All right? Let's make it personal. All right? Okay? And I hope she sees it. My own grandmother, I believe was in her late 70s or maybe early 80s at the time. Okay? I think she's in her mid-80s now. And I don't speak to her anymore. I took a printed sheet of paper that I printed out of my printer, printed it out of a laser printer, and I put a little piece of white tape. I taped a piece of white paper over the heading, the title of the document. And I asked her to read this. It had 4 paragraphs, right? And the paragraphs described each of the tenets of Satanism, very briefly. Self-preservation is the highest law, etc., etc. Moral relativism is what we believe in. Social Darwinism is what we believe in. And we believe in eugenics. Okay? She said to me, well, I pretty much agree with everything that's written there. And I said, you do? And she said, yeah, that's how I think. I don't see anything really wrong with it or bad with it. I said, okay. I said, peel that little strip of paper off that I've taped to the top. I want you to see what the document's called. And on top, it said, the tenets of modern Satanism. And you know what her response was? Well, then I guess that makes me a Satanist, doesn't it? Not horrified. Not, oh my God, what is my belief system? What do I believe in? No. Well, guess that makes me a Satanist, doesn't it? As if it was just no big thing. And you know what? You know how many people are in that mindset? Hundreds of millions, if not billions, and don't even understand what it is. Because they think Satanism is something that it is not. They don't understand what the ideology of Satanism is. They think you have to be associated with the trappings of Satanism, okay? That you have to dress as if there's such a thing as dressing like a Satanist. Or you have to have certain things on your walls in your house or in your garage if you're a Satanist. Well, let me tell you something. Satanists are the owners of banks. They own hospitals. They own schools. Okay? Yeah. Certainly that university right across the road. And many people ascribe to this religion in their thoughts, emotions, and actions, and do not even understand it because they don't even understand what that belief system is about. They don't understand what that ideology is. They don't know its tenets. So, again, going back to this, if you don't know that there is an objective, meaning in nature difference, okay, between right and wrong, that is a satanic belief system. Morality, it's not right versus left. It's about right versus wrong. This whole left-right paradigm that people are, you fall in with the left, with the Democrats, or the right, the Republicans, has nothing to do with any of that. It's a false paradigm. The thing that all of that's a distraction for not getting you to pay attention to and understand is the difference, the real, true, and objective difference between right and wrong. And we're going to explore what that is, because it can be known. It can be known, and most people will be shocked and horrified to understand the real differences between right and wrong, because they'll have to look into themselves and recognize in many ways that they are cooperating with wrong, and that they don't really truly know the difference between right and wrong. When you tell people this, I'm telling you, I told this to somebody in a bar once, which was a big mistake of even trying to bring up this discussion in that environment. But occasionally I even, make asinine mistakes like that and think I'm going to be talking to even a semi-conscious being when you're talking to a block, okay? So I said, you understand what actual morality is true common sense. We're going to look at that term, common sense, and explore what it really means. And she said, so what you're saying is if I think that there's no really objective right and wrong, that I don't have common sense. And I said, yes, that's what no, I said, that's not what I think. I'm trying to explain to you that's what it means by definition, not by what I think. The definition of common sense is to truly know the difference between right and wrong. And I said, because I say that you are not fully in that state of awareness, don't even take it personally, because billions of people on the earth are in that same state of awareness. You're not special, and it's not a personal attack against you. And I thought this person was going to throw a glass at me. Literally got so enraged because she's associating the concept of common sense with that you are functional and can adequately perform the daily activities of living. And that's not what I'm talking about as common sense, okay? Having common sense about, I can prepare my meals and eat for myself and wash my own clothes and, go to work. That's not what I'm talking about as common sense. That's your everyman's definition or connotation of common sense. We're going to talk about what common sense really is. Okay? A deep understanding of morality, which are the principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong behavior, lies at the very heart of natural law. This is the essence of it, folks, right here. And here's the difference between right and wrong in a nutshell, about as simply as I am capable of describing it. All right? Now, we use the words correct or right to mean correct and moral. When you say, okay, what's 5 plus 5? It's 10. You're right. Meaning you are correct. That is true. That is the correct answer. That is right. Okay? And then we say, was stealing that money from Jim, was that right? To mean, was it a moral behavior? So now, why would we use the same word, again, like the ancient Romans used the same word, book and free, Okay, those two different concepts were represented by the same word, liber, right? And there's a reason, because reading will put you on the path to true freedom if you read the right books. Okay? Why would in English, in the English language, we have other words to mean the same concepts, but the word right means two things simultaneously. It means both correct and it means moral. There's a reason, because they mean the same thing. Correct is moral. Correct meaning that it is in alignment with that which is true, means literally by definition, if it is true, then it is moral. The more you are following something that is false, that is not based in truth, the more you are going down the path of immorality, of wrongdoing. So we have to come to know what is true regarding right and wrong if we are going to be able to correctly, with wisdom, choose between these two modalities of behavior. So, right, again, it means both correct, which is based in truth, and moral, which means that the action, if taken, if acted upon, is in harmony with natural law. Actions based in it do not result in harm to other sentient beings. That's the definition of right. Now look at how simple that definition is. And think about it for a moment. We're talking about what is a right. Meaning, what do you have a right to do? And what you have a right to do is no different than what I have a right to do. What I'm telling you here is every single human being on this planet has the exact same rights. Not one person has one more right than another being. Not one person has one less right than another being. To think that anybody has more or less rights anywhere on the earth at any time in history is a fallacy. It is a lie. It is a deception. It is wrong. It is not correct. It is not based in truth. Rights are universal and the exact same for every human being. Blanket statement, absolute truth. Let the ego chew on it and deal with it. Okay? And again, the ego will have a hard time with this in many cases, with many people. They'll hear that and they'll want to throw a glass at me. So, look at the definition again. A right. So, when you make a definition, right, this is a noun. Right? Noun's a person, place, or thing in the English language. We're talking about a noun here. You look up the word right, it's a noun, meaning a right. A right that we have to enact, to take, is an action. You have to start a definition with the same type of word. You're defining a noun, you got to give it a noun to start the definition. A right is an action. Most people will never even be able to tell you that. Just say, can you define what a right is to me? They will not give you this noun. A right is an action. So is a wrong an action. A right is an action that if you take it, it does not cause harm to other sentient beings. That's the simple and easiest definition that anybody can give for what a right is. And I guarantee you, you go and engage as many people as you want on the street. I have not asked this question and had anybody ever raise their hand or even contact me later and say, you go up to somebody on the street and ask them if they can define what a right is. Nobody can give you the correct definition for what a right is. Now, if you don't know what the definition of a right is, you certainly don't know whether you're choosing accurately between a right and a wrong, between right and wrong behavior. You can't. It's not possible. So many people believe that they're allowed and they can do actions with no consequence that actually aren't in alignment with natural law because the taking of those actions do result in harm. And they don't really even understand that. So let's look at what a wrong is. We're going to deeply look into what a wrong is. We're going to focus on what wrongs are. Because in reality, to even start this, right, what have we based this definition on? Actions based in it do not result in harm, right? That's the negative of another definition. Well, it's the negative of this definition. So you can only actually define a right by knowing what a wrong is. A right technically cannot be defined outside of the negative. A right can only be defined apophatically, meaning understanding what a wrong is and then stating that it is anything that falls outside of the parameters of wrongdoing. Okay, and we're going to get to what those parameters are. All right? So, I'm sorry, I want to focus on wrong for a moment. Okay? Wrong, again, we say this, what's 5 plus 5? 9. Wrong, it's not true. Incorrect. Incorrect answer. It's not based in truth. We use the term wrong to mean both incorrect and immoral. Well, that was wrong what you did to that person by hitting him for no reason. You didn't have the right to do that. Immoral means in opposition to natural law, because actions that are based in it result in harm to other sentient beings. That's the simple definition of a wrong. Now we can go deeper into the definition of what a wrong is and look at different types of wrongs, which is what I'm going to do in a moment. So this is the concept that is referred to as apophatic inquiry. Very, very critical to understand concept. And you have to apply this concept. What this essentially is it's a filtration process. This is the process of the middle process in the trivium. Okay? It's weeding through the inconsistencies and saying, well, is this inconsistent? Is this inconsistent? Is that not true? And you're setting those behaviors aside and you're saying, here's the behaviors that are wrong. Don't engage in those behaviors. It's negative. It's a negative process. It's a destructive process. You're taking away from the body of everything that can be done, and you're saying, I'm pulling all of these out through a weeding down process and saying, these are all inconsistent with truth. It's called apophasis, apophatic inquiry. And that is to be delineated from what's known as cataphatic inquiry. Cataphatic inquiry means you're reasoning in the affirmative, and you're not trying to weed down through a process of elimination to get to the truth. Okay, so cataphasis or cataphatic inquiry would be equivalent to inductive reasoning, whereas apophatic inquiry or apophasis would be akin to deductive reasoning. All right. Rights are most easily understood when they are considered through apophatic inquiry, or what is known as the process of apophasis. This process helps us to understand what a right actually is by understanding which actions are not rights because they cause harm to others. They're the cause of harm. Here's what apophasis is. It's been called apophatic inquiry. Okay, really look this up. Understand what apophasis is because it's part of the trivium process. All right, it comes from the Greek noun apophasis, written there in Greek script, which comes from the Greek verb apophanai. Okay, so apo in Greek means away from or the negation of, and phanai in Greek means to say or to speak. So when we put them together, it means to say no or not to say, or to say what something is not, in other words. That's what apophasis is. You're saying this is not this. It's the opposite of that. Okay? So it is a method of logical reasoning or deductive reasoning that is employed when you are given a limited set of possibilities in order to arrive at knowledge by way of the exclusion of known negatives. You're setting the logical inconsistencies to the side and saying, this is not what this thing is. That's called apophasis. Okay? You are describing what something is by explaining what it is not. This is called affirmation through negation, is another term that this truth discovery process is known as. Okay? So, what we're going to do is apophasis. We're going to do apophatic inquiry regarding right and wrong. So, what is not a right? What are ways that people can cause harm to other people or animals? Ways that we can cause harm to other sentient beings. One of the first thing, so what we're doing here is we're going to list the boundary conditions for natural law here, for breaking natural law. If we take these actions, we are breaking natural law because the action is a cause which results in the effect of harm to another being. All right? So these are what are simply, I call them the natural law transgressions, which means sins or wrongdoings. They're simply harmful actions that a person is capable of taking to another being, against another being. That's all. So of course, many people will get the first one. What's one of the main horrible, wrong things that somebody can do to another person? Kill them, murder them, take their life. Okay? Murder. And I would distinguish murder from killing as well, because occasionally, to defend oneself, killing may be necessary. But murder is always immoral and wrong. Okay? See, the fifth commandment in Hebrew, do you know what it says in Hebrew? It does not say thou shalt not kill. The term for murder in Hebrew is tirzach. The fifth commandment in Hebrew is lo tirzach, which means do not murder. Murder as a verb in Hebrew is a completely different word and a totally different connotation than the verb to kill. Because what they're saying is, don't take life without any right to take it. Meaning that you initiated the violence. And that's what murder is. It's the initiation of the taking of somebody else's life when you had absolutely no right to take that life. Now, if someone is coming after you, your rights, there may be times when you do have to take defensive action and forceful action, up to and including deadly force. We're going to talk about that later. But murder is the first natural law transgression. And if you want to go down to a subsection of this transgression, you could list it as a totally separate wrongdoing. I'm keeping it in the same basic category. Assault, meaning you're directly physically accosting without right the well-being, the bodily well-being of another being, is also, it's like, it would be, you could consider it attempted murder. Because assault is something that you do without right. If someone assaults somebody, they have no right to commit assault. Never exists. The right to commit assault does not exist. The right to commit murder does not exist in any circumstance, ever. Blanket statement. The right to defend oneself through physical force exists, and possibly in certain circumstances, the right to kill exists. But murder and assault can never be rights, because they always are done by being initiated without the right to do so. It is the initiation of violence. All right? Rape is the second natural law transgression. Okay? You're coercing the free will of another person and making them sexually associate with whom they wish not to. That's rape. And it's always wrong. Blanket statement. All right? The third natural law transgression is theft. It is the taking of property that does not belong to you. Someone else, got that property through lawful means without hurting somebody else. That's their property for as long as they are using it and being responsible for it. And you don't have a right to just take what doesn't belong to you. Nobody has a right to take my projector or my remote control or my computer any more than I would have the right to take Richard's cameras. Okay? It would be theft of somebody else's property. It's not mine. And this is the problem. We don't understand property. As we're going to get to, all rights are property rights. We'll get to that in a moment. That's the third natural law transgression. The fourth is trespass. And that means going into somebody else's lair that they are using, that they own lawfully and that they're responsible for, without their permission or consent, and you're just invading their privacy and their space, and you're taking their security away from them in that process. And we do have a right to set aside a place for ourselves for our own lair. Okay? And to violate that is to trespass against somebody else in their own property. The fifth and last natural law transgression is coercion. This is forcing somebody through the threat of violence to have their will comply with your will, whether they don't wish that to be the case or not. Making somebody do something that is against their will. Coercing them. And that's also not a right. Now, that's a small list. Very small list, right? We could add one more. We could add lying. Lying is also a wrongdoing. And I would consider that a theft of truth or a withholding of truth that somebody needs to understand to make accurate, informed decisions, lying to them. Okay? But essentially, these 5 are the overarching natural law transgressions. I challenge anybody to come up with a wrongdoing that doesn't fit into one of these categories. So far, I've never had one person able to do it. Any wrongdoing, any action that you could think of that doesn't fall into one of these wrongdoings. Yep. I would probably categorize it as pure ignorance, but, I would say, hey, maybe you could look at it like that because that's propagating the slavery system indirectly. So, you're actually, you're not doing anything to help anybody else's freedom, certainly. I don't know if I would categorize that as a natural law transgression because, it's giving consent and propping up that system. It's not technically what I would call an action, but it's more of like giving consent. Hey, you could say that is a wrongdoing, I guess, because giving your consent is tacitly saying yes to control, and that's ultimately affecting everybody else's freedom negatively. So, possibly. But in general, what I would say is if you could think of an actual physical action that doesn't fall into one of those categories, let me know. Because that's a pretty comprehensive list, and it's only like, 6 words. So,